Chinese President Xi Jinping has landed in Moscow for a three-day summit. He is set to hold talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The planned meeting comes after a series of developments in which China has asserted itself as a peacemaker, including a peace plan for Ukraine and brokering an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Demonstrators clashed with riot police in Nairobi after the opposition called for a day of action to protest the country's cost of living crisis despite a ban on demonstrations. In Nairobi's biggest slum, Kibera, demonstrators said tires are light while several people have been arrested in the capital. Armed personnel was seen firing tear gas as protesters took to the streets in Nairobi. Opposition leader Raila Odinga, who narrowly lost last year's presidential election to William Ruto, has vowed to spearhead opposition rallies against the government. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin called on the International Criminal Court to uphold the impartial stance and respect the immunity of heads of state from jurisdiction under international law. His statement comes after the tribunal issued an arrest warrant for Russian leader Vladimir Putin on war crimes charges. Wenbin urged the ICC to avoid politicization and double standards. US and the Philippines will announce a new site for an expanded enhanced defense cooperation agreement as soon as possible, which would give the Western power access to more military bases in the Southeast Asian country. The announcement was made by US Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall after meeting Philippines Defense Chief Carlito Galvez at the Basa Air Base in Pampanga. They led a groundbreaking ceremony for the rehabilitation of the base runway. Last month, Philippine President Fernando Marcos Jr. granted the United States access to 4 military bases in addition to 5 existing locations under the 2014 EDCA agreement. Japan Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is on a 2-day state visit to India, meeting India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He said that new Indo-Pacific plan will be announced. Both leaders concurred on a range of issues including food security, climate and energy, fair and transparent development, finance. The visit is part of Japan's efforts to push for a new plan on an open and free Indo-Pacific amid increasing Chinese footprint. Both India and Japan are members of the Quad that also includes United States and Japan. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be quizzed by a panel of lawmakers on Wednesday over whether he intentionally misled Parliament about illegal parties at his Downing Street office and residence during COVID-19 lockdowns. At the centre of the inquiry are statements Johnson made to Parliament in December of 2021 about parties at 10 Downing Street when coronavirus laws kept people at home and banned indoor gatherings. The British Parliament's Committee of Privileges said Johnson would provide oral evidence to the committee in a televised session. Silencing his critics, Australian Defence Minister Richard Marles said his country made no promises to the United States that Australia would support its ally in any future conflict with China over Taiwan in exchange for the nuclear-powered submarines. The deal that Australia would purchase nuclear-powered attack submarines from the US to modernize its fleet was announced by the United States President Joe Biden along with leaders from UK and Australia. Now, many critics argued that US wanted assurance from Australia for 5 of its Virginia-class submarines, but Marles clarified that none were given by his government. The newly elected Vice President of Nepal, Ram Sahai Prasad Yadav, took the oath of office and assumed charge in a special ceremony in Kathmandu. President Ramchandra Paudel administered the oath of office and secrecy at the office of the President. Sheetal Nivas, Ram Sahai Prasad Yadav was elected as Vice President on March 17th. Ahead of Xi Jinping's key visit to Moscow, US has said that it would be unacceptable if China positions itself in the ongoing Ukraine war. White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said that if it happens, Russian President Vladimir Putin will get more time to retrain, remain and try to plan for renewed offensives in Ukraine. The US and its Western allies are deeply skeptical of China's motives, noting that Beijing has refused to condemn Russia and provided it with an economic lifeline as other countries impose sanctions on Moscow. Former Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou will visit China later this month. His office has announced Ma is a senior member of Taiwan's Kuomintang opposition party. The meet will be historic as this will be the first time a former or current Taiwanese leader will visit since the defeated Republic of China government fled to the island in 1949. The trip will come at a time of heightened tensions between Beijing and Taipei as China keeps up its military and political pressure to try and get democratically elected Taiwan to accept Chinese sovereignty. North Korean state media has said that the country's military held a tactical drill for nuclear counterattack over this weekend, including the launch of a tactical ballistic missile tipped with a mock nuclear warhead. The media reports came out early Monday morning, the day after South Korean authorities detected the missile launch. The latest missile launch comes amid North Korea's criticism of the ongoing US-South Korea military exercise Freedom Shield 23. The Canadian Defence Ministry has released a video on social media that shows more Leopard 2 tanks being prepared for departure to Ukraine. The ministry said last week that Canada will send about 8,000 rounds of artillery ammunition and a dozen air defence missiles as part of Ottawa's latest military aid to Kiev. Canada will also provide Ukraine with more than 1,800 rounds of training ammunition for Leopard 1 battle tanks donated by Denmark, Germany and the Netherlands. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad arrived in the UAE on Sunday for an official visit. Assad is accompanied by his wife. The visit comes at a time when more Arab states have signaled openness to easing the isolation of Damascus. The UAE, a US ally, has led a shift in West Asia towards reviving ties with Assad. But Abu Dhabi has rebuilt ties with Damascus in recent years, despite US objections, as it looks to counter the influence of Iran. Now, Iran and Russia had helped Assad fight his opponents. Economic Freedom Fighters, or the EFF, one of the main opposition parties in South Africa, has called for a national shutdown. Thousands are taking part in protests called by the opposition. The third largest party of the country called for protests against rolling blackouts, increasing unemployment rate and recent corruption scandals. The party is calling for the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. The opposition party said that while the protests have been initiated by them, every citizen is free to take part. People are marching across streets with banners that read "Ramaphosa must go." Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has welcomed an invitation from Saudi Arabia's King Salman to visit the kingdom following the reconciliation deal between the two countries. An Iranian official has confirmed that the two regional powers announced on March 10th a Chinese brokered deal to restore ties 7 years after they were severed. Saudi Arabia cut ties with Iran in 2016 after its embassy in Tehran was stormed during a dispute between the two countries over Riyadh's execution of a Shiite Muslim cleric. Iraqi Foreign Minister met European Union officials in Brussels on Sunday for a meeting of the EU-Iraq Cooperation Council. Ahead of the meeting, EU Foreign Policy Chief said he hoped Iraq and the bloc would build on their solid partnership and added that they planned to discuss a wide range of issues from economic cooperation to migration. He also praised Iraqi authorities for their work in helping boost relations in the region, including hosting talks to help re-establish relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Meanwhile, Iraqi Foreign Minister described the meetings as historical and praised the relationship between Iraq and the EU. After 20 years of Iraq invasion, the commander of the US-led coalition against Islamic State in Iraq and Syria has said that Islamic State militants were still carrying out opportunistic attacks. However, they have not conducted any complex attacks since January last year. The commander has said that though Islamic State military is defeated, a few fighters who are still at large are conducting these attacks. The United States led the invasion of Iraq in 2003 that toppled the regime of Saddam Hussein and withdrew in 2011. It came back in 2014, leading to a multinational coalition to defeat Islamic State, which at its peak spanned a third of Iraq and Syria. A Palestinian gunman opened fire on Sunday on an Israeli couple in their car, wounding the man in West Bank. Israeli officials said the wounded Israelis and soldiers at the scene returned fire, wounding the gunman, who was then pursued by troops and captured. The incident took place even as Israeli and Palestinian officials held US-backed talks in Egypt aimed at calming months of violence. Palestinians protested in Hebron and Gaza against talks. Palestinian militant group Hamas, which governs the Gaza Strip, condemned the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority for taking part in the meeting attended by the Israeli government. Demonstrators gathered in Paris on Sunday, a day before French lawmakers are set to vote on two no-confidence motions against the government that could result in a rejection of the controversial pension reform bill. There was tension between riot police and the demonstrators, some of which briefly clashed with the police as well. Protests have been triggered since President Emmanuel Macron announced the reforms and invoked the government's constitutional power to pass the bill without a vote at the National Assembly. Reforms will raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. Kazakhstan's president voted in a snap parliamentary election in the country's capital Astana on Sunday. The election is widely expected to cement the president's grip on power and complete a reshuffle of the ruling elite that began after he fully assumed leadership last year. A stronger mandate will help him navigate through regional turmoil caused by war in Ukraine and the subsequent damage to trade, investment and supply chains throughout the former Soviet Union. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan has said that he will take legal action against police for breaking into his house. Khan also announced plans to hold a public rally on Wednesday in Lahore. He made the statement in a speech live-streamed on YouTube a day after his supporters clashed with police at his property in Lahore. Police entered Khan's property after Khan arrived in Islamabad for the court appearance to address charges of unlawfully selling state gifts given to him by foreign dignitaries while in office. Khan says he followed legal procedures in acquiring the gifts. Khan is facing a spate of legal challenges, including one that prompted the failed attempt to arrest him on Tuesday. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, is expected to finalize a $2.9 billion bailout for Sri Lanka today. Many hope this will help turn around the Sri Lankan economy, grappling with its worst financial crisis in decades. According to officials, along with securing assurances from its major creditors like India and China, the crisis-hit island approved an anti-corruption legislation that is a key clause in the actions needed for the bailout approval. Economic mismanagement coupled with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic left Sri Lanka severely short of dollars for essential imports at the start of last year. Fed by a maze of irrigation canals, vegetables consumed in winter in the United States grow year-round in the California desert, thanks to water from the Colorado River. But a historic 2-decade drought is sparking a water war among several states along the river and putting the region's farmers at the center of the debate. A farmer in the region says Imperial County uses the largest supply of water on the Colorado River, causing a worry for other states. The countries which follow are Denmark, Iceland, Israel, the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, Switzerland, Luxembourg and New Zealand. World Happiness Report measures social support, income, health, freedom, generosity and the absence of corruption to determine a country's national happiness.
Oh guys, this is crazy.